Hello dear friends, today we are speaking about global marketing. This is second lesson of global marketing and my name is Professor Kakhaber Djakeli. Today we should touch very important point, which is environment. All companies, they are encouraged to understand more about their environment because this is very relevant to them and to their markets. What's environment and how we should understand environment? So, the world economy, its first biggest environment, what should be taken all times into consideration when we plan some business activities. In the early 20th century, economic integration was at 10%. Today it's more than 50%. There are some economic cooperations and countries, they are in this economic cooperation. Some countries, they have very huge advantage to be in some kind of economic cooperations, and other countries, they criticize the economic cooperation, some rules of economic cooperations, and they want out from this economic cooperation. So I want to say something about NAFTA. What is NAFTA? NAFTA is North Atlantic Free Trade Area. About this kind of North Atlantic Free Trade Area, today there are a lot of discussions, a lot of interesting things you can hear about NAFTA. Some Americans, they don't want their country to be in NAFTA, and other Americans, they want. Mexicans, they like the idea to continue NAFTA economic cooperation. Canadians also, they like this idea to be together with the United States because the United States is the richest country with biggest economy. But let's start from beginning. President Clinton signed NAFTA agreement and he turned NAFTA into law in 1993. And what happened after that? After signatures of presidents, so we are put on NAFTA agreement, a lot of things changed globally, and especially in the United States. First of all, in 1993, the United States had an automotive trade deficit with Mexico, like 3.5 billion. So by 2016, that deficit had grown to 45 billion. For auto parts, the United States deficit with Mexico was only 100 million in 1993. But in 2016, it was already 200 times larger at 2 and 3 trillion. In terms of Canadian trade with Mexico, the overall automotive deficit has increased 4 times. And so these kind of facts, they make American economists to say that they don't want NAFTA at all. And right now, President Trump's administration tries to renegotiate NAFTA, and they try to find some kind of interesting platform of this agreement to make Americans to win in this cooperation. So we understand that from NAFTA, economic cooperation, Mexicans won, really, and Canadians as well. But let's go also to the facts. Since NAFTA went into effect, the United States has experienced a net loss of 10 vehicle assembly plants, and Canada has lost 4 plants. Mexico nearly doubled its number of factories gaining 8. Mexico now has nearly half of North America's auto jobs, but Mexicans buy less than 8% of all vehicles sold in this kind of NAFTA economic cooperation countries. So to understand that this is paradoxical situation, who is right and who is wrong, who is among winners and who can be among losers. It's very difficult to understand. So world needs really great analytical minds to discuss the future of North Atlantic Free Trade Union. But we should continue to speak about environment in this way, about economic environment, so we understand how it's important the agreement signed about markets, about countries, about some kind of regional cooperations. So if we go to this area, we understand that the world economy is really changed in 21st century. Capital movements have replaced trade as the driving force of the world economy. Production has become uncoupled from employment. The world economy, not individual countries, is the dominating factor of the global economy right now. So the new realities we have, the struggle between capitalism and socialism began in 1917. So I want to discuss this kind of interesting area of the history. Before 1917, world knew only private property, and world knew well different theories, different economic theories, but all kind of civilization was going into one direction, and this direction was so not great supportive to capitalists, but was supporting private property. And people, they were thinking like we are thinking right now, that without private property we cannot imagine our existence and existence of our countries, existence of some kind of normal life. So but everything was changed in 1917 in Russia, in Russian Empire. People so crushed down their king, Tsar of Russia, and they brought Marxism. They understood Marxism very badly, and they suggested to construct new type of country, new type of empire without private property. And everybody were disappointed. All clever people were distracted. Some of them, they were eliminated by Bolsheviks, and a lot of people died in civil war and after civil war, and one country, Soviet Union, became one of the biggest tyranny of the world. But in this tyranny we could not find any kind of official private property. People had only needed things, and other things they could not own. Everybody were unhappy, but they could not say their opinion. Country had no democracy at all. So this was interesting part of our history. But when we speak about Soviet economy, we should also try to take into consideration healthcare of Soviet economy, what was Semashko model. In Semashko model, all kind of things were planned centrally, and big budget of health financing was managing the situation in biggest country of the world. Some people, they even today they say that like healthcare was better developed in Soviet Union than in some other countries, even after Soviet Union was damaged and was destroyed. But nobody has guarantee to criticize uh, the systems were built after Soviet Union was destroyed because we had a lot of Soviet mentality and people living in post-Sovietic countries, they were half Soviets, even they were more than half Soviets. That's why the real critic of Soviet economy and Soviet planning system I have not heard yet. So I think in future we will really well discuss and analyze advantages and disadvantages of central planning economy without private property, what was established in Soviet Union. Right now, what kind of new realities we have? Right now, this kind of country, what was Soviet Union, is destroyed, and we have post-Soviet countries. Post-Soviet countries, they struggle to develop their own economies, and so they have different kind of ideas, different kind of models, but no models still have some kind of biggest advantage. So e-commerce is growing and growing, and digital economy is overwhelming important for everybody, especially for corporations, for companies. So digital economy seems to be one of the great driving forces of economic development in future. So also industrial states, they turned into digitalization, and this digitalization makes them to find their clients in very wide countries from their head offices, in very wide distances from their head offices they can find some kind of customers. So type of government is also very important when we speak about environment, what kind of government we have. We know from history some monarchies, dictatorships, tyrannies, one-party systems, democratic systems, terrorist countries, and so on and so on. How to understand really well these kind of countries and their attitude to economic systems. We can use this very interesting approach, what is combined into one very famous matrix. Please imagine in horizontal axis we have resource allocation in the country. So resource allocation can be market resource allocation or command resource allocation. In market resource allocation, everything is managed by market itself. In common resource allocation, all kind of resources, they are allocated by countries' generals, by countries' managers, by bureaucrats, by autocrats, by tyrants, by kings or monarchs, or by huge, great terrorists. So this is up to country who they have as a establishment, as a king of the situation. So resource allocation should be divided into two parts: market resource allocation and common resource allocation. This is in horizontal axis. In vertical axis, please, you can also establish this matrix. Please establish this kind of type of stages. Ownership, resource ownership. Who owns what? resource ownership can be state and resource ownership can be private. So when we have state resource ownership, but resource allocation is market. Can you imagine the situation when we have state resource ownership and allocation is managed by market? So this kind of economic system is entitled as market socialism. Market socialism. So this market socialism is one of the best form of economy what can be developed in future in some kind of states or countries. So that means that market according principles of marketing can manage state ownership. Wonderful. And everybody will like this idea. So this is market socialism. When some market forces, they manage state resources. Please, once again, imagine the situation when we have state ownership, but this state ownership is managed by command autocrats or bureaucrats or system, some kind of state system, what has some kind of generals who are commanding what to do. So this kind of type of economic system can be entitled as centrally planned socialism. So because many people in Soviet Union were lived in centrally planned socialism. They had big experience what it was and how it was, and even I encourage my students around the world to go and ask questions to your friends, especially you should find friends among people who are right now 50 years old or more, and they lived in Soviet Union or some kind of other country with central planning system, and ask questions about what they heard good and what they heard bad about their economic system. So centrally planned socialism, this is the situation when command system of managers or state system of managers, they manage everything what is under ownership of state. And in these kind of countries, especially people have no private ownership. So everything is under rule of the state. Right now, let's go to private resources and let's discuss how private resources can be managed. This is also two different ways. Private resources can be managed by common economic system or state, and we have in that kind of situation centrally planned capitalism, what right now we have in China, what right now we can see in China. So this is centrally planned capitalism. This is like private resources, private economy, but everything and especially most relevant aspects of this economy is managed by some one-party system of bureaucrats or autocrats. So this is centrally planned capitalism. But if market manages private resources of economy, we have in that kind of situation market capitalism. What is the market capitalism? Market capitalism must have private resources, and these private resources should be managed by market itself. So from this kind of four systems of economy, market capitalism, centrally planned capitalism, market socialism, and centrally planned socialism, I like more market capitalism. So I think that this is more democratic form of economic life and economic development. Others, they can have their attitude to this kind of matrix. So let's discuss later. Market capitalism. Individuals and firms allocate resources. Production resources are privately owned and driven by customers, and government's role is to promote competition among firms and ensure consumer protection. So government all times should be very attentive against unofficial cartels and try to destroy all official or unofficial monopolies or cartels on the market to encourage poor people to participate in decision making and encourage competition to be really well working like big engine of economy. We should know that competition is greatest engine of economic development in market capitalism. So Western market systems are really very interesting right now. There are Anglo-Saxon model. In Anglo-Saxon model, there are private ownership companies, free enterprise economy. Capitalism is really very soft. Minimal social safety net sometimes is like accessible by people. Highly flexible employment policies, so they take part in some kind of decision making. Such kind of countries, they have only one big disadvantage, what is minimal social safety net. And these countries are especially well known around the world, and the biggest country among Anglo-Saxon model economies is United States. And United States all time struggles to have social safety. And they have right now minimal social safety. But they have a lot of market forces. They promise you, if you work well, if you have big talents, big skills, you can find your private sources, private financial, some kind of mechanisms to finance your social development. So, social market economic model is very interesting. What is this? This is also private ownership, but social partners, they influence economy really well. So unions, associations, they try to build the face of the economy, and government all times tries to be in negotiation with unions and associations to find some golden cut between commandment and freedom. So this is like very interesting countries. People love these countries, and a lot of refugees especially, they flee to these countries because there they have a lot of interesting some kind of advantages. So first of all, Germany is country with social market economy. France is also country of social market economy, and Italy is struggling to have social market economy. According to my opinion, I like more social market economic model countries, especially Germany, because this kind of economic model gives chance to many people to have good education, to have good high education, to improve their skills, and to go and to find their market some benefits. So according to my opinion, this model is one of the best. But to establish such model in the country, you need a lot of skills and experiences and intellectual properties, you need a lot of interesting and great advantages, especially history. Your country should have history of one good big nation, what's involved into feeling of solidarity. And this feeling of solidarity can make people to be happy, to finance everybody and allocate sources for poor people, for pensioners, for refugees, for people who have no financial sources at all. So these kind of countries, they have very huge history, they have their biggest advantage in their culture, and so they have also very good and promising economic system established and built by enterprises. In German case, these enterprises mostly are small and average enterprises. So 50% of German GDP is done by small and average enterprises. Nordic models I want to describe right now. So beside Anglo-Saxon model, besides social market economic model, we should discuss also Nordic model. What is this? This is mix of state ownership and private ownership. High taxes we can find in these countries. Some market regulation is very high in such kind of countries. And social safety net is also very important and well constructed in this kind of countries. So which countries can be here? First of all, Sweden and Norway. Wonderful countries. We know that index of happiness is very high in Norway. Also, Sweden is among most appreciated countries, not only by economic development, but also by happiness. So people in Norway and Sweden are happy. So why not to build such kind of Nordic model of countries in future? So nobody can answer this question. Today we are discussing marketing. For marketers, it's not important how to build big economic model. It's important how to use economic model as an environment for success and advantage orientation of companies and enterprises. So centrally planned socialism, once again, I want to say that this is opposite of market capitalism, and consumers can spend only what is available in their hands. Demand typically exceeds supply, and such kind of countries are China, India, former Soviet Union, and many other small socialistic countries. They were under this kind of model. Centrally planned capitalism is also very interesting. And economic system in this kind of countries is under the rule of big bureaucrats, and so they try to control everything in the country. In many cases, European Union's bureaucrats are criticized by regional or some kind of multinational economic leadership organizations. So they say that European bureaucrats sometimes they try to plan and manage capitalism according wrong principles, and this is not fair for regions and especially well-developed states and well-developed national some kind of formations. So economic freedom is one of the best thing. For economic freedom, people flee from one countries and go to another countries. They must to be free to establish their products and establish their services, and they want to do their best according to their opinion, according to their skills and talents and so on. Variables considered in this kind of economic freedom, this is trade policy, taxation policy, what makes people to be free, trade policy, taxation policy, capital flows and foreign investments, banking policy, wages and price controls, property rights, and so on. According to economic freedom, there are some countries having biggest advantage. First of all, this is Singapore, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Australia, Switzerland, Canada, Chile, Estonia, Ireland, so small Georgia, Republic of Georgia is also one of leading economic freedom ranking countries. So Georgia is also one of the interesting countries to be among leaders according economic freedom. So North Korea, for example, is totally unfree, and this is in 178th place. Cuba is totally unfree, and this is in 177th place. Venezuela, we know that Venezuela all times has a lot of problems. This is also unfree country, and Iran, Turkmenistan, Eritrea, Zimbabwe, these countries are totally unfree countries, and they make their people, they make their citizens to be unhappy, to be pressed by government, by commanding system members and some kind of unofficial groups. So people mostly flee from unhappy countries to economic some kind of paradises. So what are economic paradises? First of all, this is countries having biggest economic freedom. So there are interesting regional cooperations, which is BRICS, for example, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They are most interesting economic cooperation members having huge future. So all times companies, enterprises, they think about economic cooperation members and their destinies and their histories, their economic models, their some economic indicators. One of very interesting books, what was written about to understand environment, was done by one of interesting economists who established the book with this kind of title, The Secrets of Economic Indicators. I'm all times suggesting to my students this kind of book, and I'm saying to them, please learn this book, find this book. If you know the secrets of economic indicators, you can plan your business well, even if you don't invest in your money into marketing research and you don't have available sources to invest into marketing research, and you know well the secrets of economic indicators, you can really understand well countries around you and plan your business really in a very nice way. So countries are also divided into low-income countries or low-middle-income countries and upper middle-income countries. What are low-income countries? In low-income countries, so gross national income is less than 1,045 US dollar annually. What kind of characteristics we can find here? Limited industrialization these countries have, high percentage of population in farming, high birth rates they have, low literacy rates they have, heavily reliance on foreign aid distinguishes them from other countries. Political instability and unrest differentiates them from other countries. Concentrated in some kind of poorest regions also makes them to be distinguished from other regions and other countries, especially when we speak about concentration in sub-Saharan Africa. There are countries having low income, and these countries continue to struggle, and their economic policy still cannot make some great improvements. Lower middle income countries. So they are countries having gross national income per capita between $1,000 to $4,000 annually. And they have the following characteristics. They rapidly expanding their consumer markets. They have cheap but well-motivated labor sources. So they are workers, they are cheap to be hired, but they are well-motivated and they are skillful. They are enough skillful to be employed by multinational companies entering their regions and so used well. These people can be happy to do money. So they have also mature, standardized, labor-intensive industries like footwear, textiles, and toys. And India is the only BRIC nation to be among low middle income countries. About upper middle income countries, we can say the following things. Their GNP can be between 4,000 to 12,000 US dollar. And they have the following characteristics. Rapidly industrialization takes place there. Increasing urbanization also takes place there. Their wages are really improving and rising. Their literacy rate is also improving and strengthening. So, and these countries right now, they like do their rebranding. They want to make world citizens to find some kind of new advantages in their country brand. So such kind of countries, they are Brazil, China, South Africa. A lot of people go to China right now, and they are well surprised. They say that this is interesting, great, paradise. Everybody wants to have business in China, or everybody wants to have business started in China and continue to some other region. So once again, we should also take into consideration newly industrializing economies. So low, middle, and upper income economies with the highest sustained rates of economic growth, they can be entitled as newly industrialized economies, and they have greater industrial output that makes them to grow really fast, and they export really well. And so these kind of countries, especially Indonesia, Philippines, Mexico, Turkey, so they have really great chances. But they have also a lot of some kind of risks. And these risks sometimes is diminishing their chances to be really well growing and sustainable, politically stable societies. So be attentive to the risks. So high-income countries are also very interesting. Their gross national income is more than 12,000. They are also known as advanced, developed, industrialized, or post-industrial countries. And their characteristics are sustainable economic growth. Service sector in these kind of countries is more than 50% of gross national income. So all times be attentive to assess this service sector. If people use a lot of services, that means that they live in high income society, high income country, advanced economic society, developed or industrialized country, or post-industrial state. So such kind of countries we know well, they have heavy industries, they are well developed in all kind of ways, and people love their some kind of examples of their products and their services, and all world really is theirs. G7, the group of seven. This is very interesting. Goal of global economic stability and prosperity we can find in G7 countries. So these countries are United States, first of all, Japan, Germany, France, Britain, Canada, and Italy. Russia joined in 1998 this kind of G7, changing the group to G8, but its membership was suspended in 2014 after Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula. What Russia does in future, nobody knows. And I think it's really good that Russia was out from G8, and G8 once again came back to old shape and became G7 as it was. So it's also very interesting that this is new type of society established in 1999. This society is entitled as Group of 20. And finance ministers and central bank governors of 19 countries and the United Union, this is 20th country, they meet each other and they discuss future of world economy and a lot of interesting things. When we speak about environment, we should also try to understand well the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, because this organization does a lot of interesting things for world economy and world economic growth. There are 34 nations in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and this was established on the platform based in Paris Agreement. So Canada, United States, Japan, and other countries, they joined this Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and organization focused on world trade, global issues, labor market regulations, anti-bribery conventions, and so on. But when we speak about economic cooperations, we cannot make out the triad. So the triad of countries, what are overwhelming important for everybody. What is the triad at all? They are United States, Western Europe, and Japan. These three regions are entitled as triad of world economy. They represent 75% of world income. Expanded triad includes all of North America and the Pacific region, and they have, with Western Europe and Japan together, one of the biggest influence on the economy. So when we speak about environmental impacts on economy, and we try to understand overview of international policy and the role of some kind of economic indicators for development of regions, countries, biggest cooperations among countries. We should try to manage these kind of things through economic exposure. What is the economic exposure? This is great phenomenon of our time. Economic exposure refers to the impact of currency fluctuations on the present value of the company's financial performance. It occurs when sales are in a foreign currency. For example, Nestle and some kind of companies like Nestle or their competitors, they generate 98% of sales outside home country. So Eurozone companies, GlaxoSmithKline, Daimler, and other companies, BP, they generate 1/3 of sales in the United States. Managing economic exposure is one of the best chance of world to develop its own economy. Numerous techniques and strategies have been developed to reduce exchange rate risks. Hedging, for example. Hedging involves balancing the risk of loss to one currency with a corresponding gain in another currency. Forward contracts set the price of the exchange rate at some point in the future to eliminate some risks. So economic exposure is the great chance to try to make economy healthy and work together with countries, leaders to avoid the economic system from great risks and make this economic system to be sustainable, to feed its citizens and employ a lot of people and make people happier. One biggest economic indicator, what I like mostly, this is index of economic happiness, index of economic freedom, and index of happiness at all. So we can say that index of happiness together with index of economic freedom makes me to find interesting countries and makes me to involve companies from these kind of countries into country what I like mostly. This is really my motherland where I was born. All times I'm thinking that my motherland, my country, should have also highest index, which is happiness index, and one of the highest index of economic freedom. So if people economically free and they are happy, they will represent and show all their skills and put these skills into their output and be proud to their job done for their enterprises and their countries. So today I want to finish my class about global marketing and say goodbye. Thank you very much.